Okay. I believe we are live on Facebook. Mr. Andrew Banks is joining us. Guys and girls, wherever you are in the world, thank you very much for joining us. My name is Ryan Tuckwood. I'm the CEO and co-founder here at ISR Training. I'm super excited to share with you guys today some wisdom, some knowledge, some anecdotes and some stories, no doubt, from one of the most successful entrepreneurs to walk the earth, in my opinion. So if you do not know who is sitting to my left as I'm looking at it, to your right maybe as you're looking at it, this gentleman is originally a 10-pound pom. Some of you will know what that means, some of you won't. Moved over here from the UK back in the 70s. He's got a theatrical background, which will probably come out in the next half an hour as well at some stage, but is more commonly known for his HR and recruitment background. In 1985, he started an organization called Morgan & Banks, which actually owns 17% market share in Australia and Asia. They had sales of over $850 million and also took them public. There's no mean feat. And then in 2003, launched a company called Talent 2, which focused on HR outsourcing and executive search and operated in over 20 countries. Again, that organization went public. But more notably, went from being $16 million in the red to $400 million for a $400 million organization. Some of you will probably know him more so for the TV show Shark Tank. He's the guy that sits right in the middle. Read into that as you will, but I would say that means he's the godfather of Shark Tank. And he has invested in over 15 businesses across the US and Australia, included us here at ISR Training. Mr. Andrew Banks, how are you, sir?
Hey, I'm good to see you. And I hope everyone who's listening is safe and well. We're living through unusual times, to say the least. I'm probably the oldest person on this program right now, and I've never seen anything like it. But, you know, you can't predict how life will deal the cards. But when you get them, you got to make sure you handle them as they come. So we're all in this together.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I really wanted to have a quick chat with you today. Naturally, for us, we coach just over 5,000 businesses around the world right now, and there's a lot of doom and gloom. There's a lot of people that maybe this is their first business, their first venture into entrepreneurship, and they don't know what to do. And I know there isn't a textbook, but what I wanted to do is reach out to the people in our network that have got the most experience, and who better than our shareholders, with you being one. So this is being called a crisis, with what we're going through right now. In your opinion, firstly, is it a crisis? And how is it comparing to other crises you've been through in business over the last few decades?
Yeah, well, look, crisis is always a volatile world. It's very tough for the economy when you just slam the brakes on. And what's different about it is it's not a recession created by high interest rates like the 80s or the 70s, or by a stock market crash, or by some sort of, or a war, this is created by just a collapse in demand. And that's clearly because we know it's the health crisis, the pandemic, when you lock people up and you shut down the economy. And politicians, of course, are all about getting re-elected. And, they've got this terrible balance to make sure they protect their communities, which is what they're elected to do, but at the same time, don't damage them more. So collapse in demand, very quick. I think the good news for Australia and New Zealand, for those who are listening from here, we're in a much better position than a lot of countries because we're already coming out the other side. It doesn't mean we're through the health crisis. We know there's a whole bunch of issues associated with that, and I'm not the expert, and you can all read. But it does, so it means a bunch of waves, but it does mean that we're probably going to snap back in a number of areas, and we'll come on to which areas will come back faster than others. So the other good news is, without being an economist, in the old days, the great people who've done a bit of history, the Great Depression was actually created not by the stock market collapse, but by what the central bankers did, and then trade wars afterwards. So the good news is all the governments around the world have worked out their mistakes. They're printing money. They're doing what they can. So there's no holy grail here, but I think the recovery in Australia and New Zealand will start to come back pretty quickly into the end of May and June. There'll be some areas which will improve. And I think, because it's a collapse in demand, and we'll get onto it, what every business owner's got to think about is how they get demand back, or sales, or business, or top line revenue. And there's going to be some things which we can talk about that they have to change to do that.
Sure. Okay, now that makes sense. And you referenced there a few mistakes have been made, like for small businesses maybe firstly, and then we might go on to enterprise companies as well. But for the small businesses out there, what are the common mistakes you see that they're making in these types of situations?
Well, I think, if you sat there and watched the news and you think about what could possibly go wrong and everything go wrong and you just get negative, that's the first mistake you make. You've got to none of us are Winston Churchill, but we've got to have some of his stubborn optimism. We can't change what's going on, but we certainly need to be able to manage our own self and our own emotions. So the first thing is, don't freeze, don't be a rabbit in the headlights. Try to stay calm. Think about, okay, I can't change certain things. What can I change? What can I control? So that's the first thing. Work on yourself. Get yourself into a position where, you can't, like Winston couldn't predict the end of the war, but he told the British people that they weren't going to be succumbed and that they were better than that. And I think there's a bit of that which leads into the next point, which is communicate. Don't go into a black hole and just hide. You've got to talk to your staff, talk to your customers. I'll give you one example. I'm a shareholder in a driving range, a golf driving range in Thornley, right? And, you'd think, well, if you're stuck at home, going to a driving range isn't bad. But the customers weren't coming because they were worried about infection. So the first thing we did is over-communicate. We sent photographs all around showing them how we spray the balls, spray the machines, and how they could come in, literally hardly touch anything, hit their credit card, go to the ball machine, get the ball, and actually exercise. We're up 10%. And that's because we over-communicated to customers. Same with your team, your staff, whether you employ 3 people, 5 people, or 500 people. Everyone's going through the same thing. So talk to them. Be honest and open. Over-communicate. And don't be slow. That's the other mistakes people make. Don't sit there, be slow, and not confront the reality of the situation and think it's all going to just blow over.
Sure. Yeah, I like that. I think the over communication something is that that's something that we've been very big on over the last couple of months. And ironically, we had a big reset on Wednesday. We had a big reset as an organisation. We said, where are we now going? We've got over the hill. There was definitely that grief stage, that little bit of shock initially of how we're going to get through this. We strategized, we did. And we said that we're actually closer as a team now because we were over communicating. So you did cover it. So over communicate with your prospects or the clients and your team as well. Yeah. And
supply chain. I mean, if you're a business that imports stuff, I'm involved in another business that brings stuff in from China. We're still doing that. But we've switched some of the products that we're doing. We've talked to they're just as confused. How's it going down there in Australia? Will you still be ordering again? So I think all the things that are part of your business network, suppliers, staff, customers, your banker, obviously, if cash flow is an issue, which I'm sure it is for a lot of companies, what can I do so, in some businesses, we were able to stall the rent. In other businesses, we were able to take advantage of certain government schemes. In another business, basically a property sector that I'm involved in, we were able to push interest payments 3 months till we could regroup. You just got to communicate with every person or entity that impacts on your business.
Yeah, amazing. We had a situation where we've been pretty fortunate with the clients that we coach. We have one organisation that they requested a refund from the physical training that they booked. They said, look, well, we can't do the physical training for 6 months, so we'll just have our money back for now. And instantly you think, well, it's that they need the cash. And when we spoke to them, we uncovered the fact that they were unsure about whether we were going to be around in 6 months' time, whether they were going to get their money. So it wasn't that they were struggling, it was that they assumed we might be. So when you over-communicate and you're recent and you're frequent, you show that, hey, we're still around, we're not going anywhere. So it gives confidence to your current clients as well. I love that.
And hopefully you told them that instead of doing the physical stuff, we'll do it online because, boy, do their team need sales training as much as anyone right now. But anyway, we'll come on to that.
But we'll get to that. But that I guess that's where I was going to lead towards is where from a buying perspective and from the market right now, on the back of these crises, on the back of a recession, what trends do you see in buying behaviours and how quickly do we see an upturn in it?
Well, if you look at the crowd or the sharing economy, you can see how that's affected, things like Uber and certain things. I think, to many families, it's obvious that online learning and these kind of meetings and communications. I wonder how many companies will send people on a plane between capital cities for a routine meeting. Important to get together for some things, but I think we're all going to rethink that. Should we crowd and pollute the atmosphere driving in cars to a central business district to occupy a box when maybe we can be just as effective by going to a suburban office? So I think there's going to be some longer term changes. I think what's practical for a business today, and I always think 2 ears, 1 mouth, do everything, listen twice as much as you speak. And that is, get out and talk to your businesses, talk to your customers, and ask them what's going to change for them. How are you going to be different? It's also a much more positive way of, people say, how's business? Oh, it's terrible. Okay, but you're obviously going to survive. You're going to be here. What are you going to do differently? So, restaurants obviously are going to be constrained by space and physical space inside, but they're already, as you know, doing drive-bys, takeaways, deliveries. We're spending quite a lot of money with restaurants in our area, but in a different way. That's one example. So I think a lot of listening, a lot of curiosity, a lot of asking questions, and people have got time. Talk to me about what's going to be different. How would we be better suited to serve your needs going forward? And I mean, this is sector specific. I feel for people in tourism and travel at the moment. That's clearly one of the last sectors to recover. But there are a lot of other sectors that are going to do quite well sooner rather than later. And I think it's just about, your business better than anyone else. You know who your customers are. Talk to them and ask them how, in a positive way, what are you going to be doing differently as things return back to normal? And when you listen to that, you may hear opportunities to tweak your product, tweak your pricing, and obviously tweak what you actually deliver to customers.
Yeah, amazing. There was, I was expecting you to say it in there, but there's one quote that I've got from you that is always stuck. And for the people that are just finishing the 14-day sales challenge that we're doing right now, you'll know this one. It's be interested, not interesting. And right now, there's no better time to be interested in them, showing empathy and showing you care, because they'll remember the companies that were, right? Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, there will be some things that will be very, as I say, sector specific. But it may be that there's a whole crowd or a whole customer base that you've never really dealt with, but now could be very relevant. There's a health clinic down on the south coast, south of Sydney, and they made most of their money with people coming in doing, everything from saunas and steam baths and getting vitamins injected in them. Anyway, but they sold a lot of supplements. So their supplement business is now supporting their overall business because their clinic is closed at the moment. And, we're supposed to them recently, and they've been, because they've got a database and they've got, contact with those customers, they're supplying them with a whole bunch of, supplements which are good for the immune system and health system whilst those people are at home until they start to open up again. There's always got to be an angle. And I go back to stubborn optimism, none of us know quite how this is all going to play out, but you've got to have the determination that, you and your business are going to make it. It's going to make it in a different way. And then you've got to apply actions and try different things.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. And I think you've probably already given everybody 3 or 4 practicals, but if there were some steps, what should we, me included, what should we be doing right now to prepare to come out the back of this? If there's 2 or 3 practicals that we could do.
Well, the other, I'm a great believer in it's a 2-terminal universe, like you and I are chatting. That's probably better than me talking to myself or you. And I think even if you're a small team, 2 or 3, get everybody, on a call and ask for everyone's point of view. Often the youngest, most recent staff member to join your organization has the best and freshest ideas. So then say, so what are the ideas? What will we need to change? So I think as a team, clearly communicate. And I think that's encouraging for them because they hear a business owner or a founder or a boss talking about the future, not, oh, woe is us. Then I think talk about how we can ask our customers, how do we communicate them, ask some questions, what can we do for them to stay in touch? For example, we're in the gift card business and the auto dealers, selling cars is not easy at the moment. You go, well, how does a gift card business apply? Is someone going to buy a $30,000 gift card for Father's Day? I don't think so. But what about a $1,000 gift card as a deposit on an auto for an auto dealer? And then what about accessories like seat covers or wing mirrors or whatever? And then you start to realize that some of the smart auto dealers are keeping in touch with their customers by using digital gift cards and offering ways of giving people presents whilst they're waiting for the actual auto sales business to pick up. There's got to be an angle. You've got to brainstorm with your team, find out what the angle is, try, fail a little bit, try something else, keep probing the opportunities. Do nothing is not an option. And then, that also means a bit of analysis, but back to sort of asking questions. A bit like a good salesperson. The best salespeople I've ever come across ask the best questions.
And learn to shut up so they can hear the answers, right?
That's right.
That's the key. I guess leaning in towards that then, because I know, because you've told me many times, you invested in our business because of our economies of scale. Obviously, it's a digital program, but
yeah.
you thoroughly believe that the best way to learn, and you've got your, you back a few companies in the online training space, but you believe that's the best way to learn in general, right? Not just because of what's happening, but you've also always felt that way. Is that
yeah,
fair?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, first of all, the digital universe doesn't solve every problem, but a lot of people think technology in the digital universe makes things impersonal. And my generation grew up in the warm, touchy-feely, you've got to press the flesh and relationships are important and, how can you really assess someone unless they're in the room with you? Well, it's nonsense because in many ways technology improves the experience. I'm involved in Shortlisted, which does cultural assessment apart from other ways of assessing whether people should be, appropriate for a job. And you think about, well, I want Joe because he's a good cultural fit. Well, how do you assess a cultural fit? Well, we get him in for an interview and we have 3 or 4 people who've been with the company a while and they all chat to him and we decide whether he's a cultural fit. Well, that's frankly not very scientific, not very good. How about a system which Shortlisted uses, which is, the company puts in 40 or 50 key things that defines a culture. Like, being a team player means that you consider how you can help your other members in the company do better rather than, just thinking about, your own job and, being responsive to a question from whatever the definitions are. How do you like to be managed? I like lots of autonomy, or I like to be told exactly what to do. They're all the key things. So then you put that in a questionnaire digitally. And then when you're recruiting people, they complete the same questionnaire from their side. And the software very quickly tells you whether you're a 20% match or a 90% match, which means when you get to an interview, probably a video interview to begin with, you're much more likely to cover the key points that make sure you don't make a mistake by joining the wrong company and vice versa. And in sales training, I mean, yes, it's great to be motivated and in a room. I've seen you guys, very, very inspiring and motivating. And I think that's an important ingredient. But how do people learn best? They learn, when it suits them, 24/7. If I want to wake up at 2 a.m. and do a sales training exercise for 30 minutes, why not? Repetitive. I want to be able to replay it. I want to be able to practice. And I don't necessarily want to have an audience looking over my shoulder while I'm doing it. That's how I would perfect. That's how an actor perfects his lines for a stage play or for a film. And so I think the digital universe allows us to learn and grow in a way that is much more sustainable. And so that's why, the fact that people can do a 12-week course online and have access to that data rather than going into a room, being buoyed up, remembering maybe 5 or 6% of what was told and then have no ability to kind of follow that up and really practice it and drill down isn't enough. So what I think the digital universe isn't everything, but it has a very important place in learning.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think I've gone full circle on it, because I think for me, I was a face-to-face learner. That's how I got the best out of things. And you now know historically, since we've taken the training digital, the best results have now been proven over time to be digital. It doesn't see the quick spike that face-to-face does, which is just inspiration. That's all it is. But over time, it's digital as well. And with what I wanted to ask you, because this is another common thing we get, is I won't commit to digital training. I won't be able to stay motivated. Like, how do you stay inspired to do something on your own if you don't have the support? Obviously, we do offer the support, but do all of your companies do that?
Well, look, learning is an interesting thing. By the way, I should have mentioned ABC Learning, which is the #1 literacy program in the US. We've got 2.5 million customers online. We know for a fact that we can teach 2 to 9-year-olds to become literate, and they don't even have to go to school if they do 45 minutes 3 times a week. We can prove it. So if you can teach a young kid to be literate online, they never go to school. Obviously, you want them to go to school for their social learning and a whole bunch of other things. But there's no doubt that the human brain can learn very quickly that way. Back to your other question, you ask a provocative question, and this is a good question for anyone thinking of employing salespeople. The biggest amount of sales training money you can waste is trying to train people who don't want to be in sales. Yeah. So there's a recruitment issue, and that's all about, can they do it, will they do it? So the first thing you got to do is make sure people really embrace the fact that they want to learn. Because if you want to learn and want to grow, you shouldn't have to be too motivated to want to do the next online lesson. So, I mean, I have to say that because I think a lot of people blame the training tool, and what they really should do is say, you selected the wrong person, dummy, because they never wanted to be in sales, and you forced them into the wrong job. Not everyone should be in sales. But if you say you want to be in sales and you want to train, and that, I think the motivation is that ultimately, if you're a really driven salesperson, you want to get better, you want to be the best that you can be. And the only way that you can do that is drill, perfect, work out, what did I do well that closed that sale? Why did that one not work so well? And keep analyzing and doing that. And I think, you know, if you've got that drive and you've got that curiosity, frankly, you shouldn't need too much more motivation to do the next lesson. So I think it's got to come from in here. And if it's not coming from in here, don't blame the training tool. Maybe ask yourself whether I'm doing the right job.
Yeah, I love it. And we always say that you need to invest 3 things: time, emotions, and money. And if you haven't invested all 3 of those things, then you're not going to get the most out of the training. I got a couple more questions, and being respectful of your time, Andrew, so I'll wrap it up. But from your theatrical background, and I wasn't going to ask you this, but it's something that comes up quite a lot. It's remembering scripts, remembering the information. How did you learn to remember your scripts off the top of your head? Like we do role play in our company 4 times a day. So is it just role play? Are there any other tips that you could give us to remember new information that we learn?
Well, to me, it was just practice. I mean, I don't have a photographic memory. I'm not some kind of, I am, you know, neurolinguistically, I am audio. So if I see something and hear it, I tend to, you know, remember it. I can remember numbers sometimes better than words. I've just got to, but I think it's practice. And, you know, I remember the first script I was ever told, which was how to list a recruitment job over the phone. And, you know, the old recruiters used to say, "Excuse me, sir, I noticed, you know, you're advertising for a general manager. Can we help you? We've got candidates on file." And then there would be a million objections that would come from that. And we always had a very, very specific script, which was, "I noticed you're advertising for a general manager. If we came up with someone who met all your requirements, would you consider them?" And that is a very carefully worded script that makes you much more likely, would you consider them, to say yes. So I think scripts are important because when you're selling on the phone or face-to-face, there's a million signals going on around you and you don't always have that ability to be collected. And so a script just keeps you on track. Once you've done it for a while, you don't need the script and you throw it away. But I don't think it's false, because I think all it's doing is preparing you to use the right tone, the right open-ended question. And as you know in sales, it's much better to ask a question than make statements. "Well, I think you're too expensive, Andrew." You know, well, okay, you must have a good reason for saying that. What part of what I just discussed did you feel was not giving you value for money? It's a question. And I think you can practice that and you can get better. I was a failed doctor and a biologist and then an actor. I didn't get born in some sort of sales shell, but I followed people who were really good at it. I listened, I practiced, and suddenly I was good at sales.
Wow, guys, who thought that Andrew was going to give you sales training today? That's amazing. One other thing, and I'm going to squeeze as much value out of you as I can in the last 4 minutes. Your network right now, in this time when everything's going on, somebody just wrote it in there in the Facebook chat, so I'm going to ask it. How important is it that we surround ourselves with the right people, and who do you surround yourself with? Who's keeping you motivated and stubbornly optimistic?
I don't know where I got it from. I think from my mother, you know, who was a very positive person. So, you know, I thank my family for this. but I've always instinctively felt that we are what we eat, breathe, and who we let near our minds. So I'm a total believer that negative thinking is contagious, and be careful who you let near your mind. So frankly, whether it's social, whether it's family, whether it's in business, if people are around me, you can hear it in their language, you know, whatever can go, I just don't have them in my environment. I just don't. We know that there's a lot of negativity, but I don't want them in my environment. Now, they may have an issue and I have to deal with them and help them confront it. So generally, and I'm not talking about being around people who are glib and just, you know, oh, isn't it wonderful? We've got the pandemic, isn't it amazing? I mean, that's nonsense. Of course, we've got things that are serious topics to be able to confront. But, okay, what are we going to do about it? How can we make it better? How can we minimize the impact? And I think I listen to language a lot. And when you just listen to people and how they talk, you will know whether they are ultimately optimistic or pessimistic, whether they think their success is only facilitated by other people doing badly. They're people to watch, they're dangerous people, or whether they believe their success is predicated on others around them doing better as well, because that's a shared success. So listen to language, and if you feel that when you've walked away from a conversation with someone, you're feeling not quite right, a little bit down, then listen to that language and ask yourself whether that person is essential to your business or your life.
Yeah, and it's that's a muscle. You learn to spot that very quickly over time, right? And
I did.
You have to learn to. I speak about it a lot. Auditing your network, auditing the people that are around you. I do it in my newsfeed on social media every month. I make a conscious effort to actually remove the negativity because it will go in eventually. Yeah.
And you can test them. Sometimes people, you say, well, oh, this is terrible. What do we? So what do you suggest? What can you do? And you give people a second or third chance. But if after 3 or 4 chances it's all bad and it's all terrible, then I have to say that's back to the salespeople. I mean, we spent a lot of time in recruitment training people who liked to talk to people. And by the way, our vision of sales was not browbeating people and twisting their arm. Our vision of sales was servicing people with what they wanted in a way that they remembered and loved and were just ready to buy. And so they were passionate, they loved what they did. And I think, we spent a lot of time making sure that the people we brought into our company had that attribute. I love the quote from the CEO of Neiman Marcus years ago, who, when the stores were going well and the journalists and the investors said, wow, these people are amazing. Who trains them? And he said, their mothers do. And what he meant by that was, we hire people who have that innate enthusiasm and positive attitude, and then we teach them about retailing.
Amazing. That goes, anybody that's been trained by myself or Jack, you'll know the 3 Ps: people first, process second, performance third. Love it. Final question. Right now, Andrew, if people are thinking about doing any sort of education, what is the #1 skill that they need to be able to survive and ultimately thrive what's going on right now? How are they going to hit the ground running on the back end of this?
Well, they've got to be nimble, and they've got to understand where new revenue is coming from. And new revenue equals sales. Now, sales doesn't mean taking what you've got and just trying to sell it more aggressively than you're doing it already. But it means, think about, what does my business provide? How does it satisfy the needs of the customers, existing customers, typical customers, but maybe a new kind of customer? And then how do I promote it? And that really is taking a very sort of 360-degree view of increasing your top line, because it's a collapse in demand. You've got to get demand back on the table. And, as I said, I use restaurants because we've all been there. If your typical 100% of your revenue is people sitting at tables inside a box, you've got to think outside that box and say, how can I do that? And, I've got a delivery coming this afternoon from a central kitchen from a restaurant that's making home deliveries all over Sydney, producing meals that are ready to cook. They're not ready-made meals. It's not takeout. It's actually meals, and you then do the last 20 minutes of the cooking, which is fabulous. There's obviously, takeout and delivery, and then there's the innovation of don't get out of your car and we'll just bring it to your car. You phone us when you're outside. We'll keep you safe and all that stuff. You've got to be able to slice and dice. Your business must have things going for it. You've got people, you've got intellectual property, you've got supply chain, you've got contacts, you've got products, you've got services. Think about it as a Rubik cube, twist the cube, and then work out how you sell it and promote it. And that's all about having good sales skills and good listening skills.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. It is 3:30 on the dot. You know, I live by a routine and a structure, as do you. Any final nuggets of gold you want to share?
No, just worry about what you can control. Stay positive. We're all going to get through this. Human race is an amazing survivor, and let's all stay safe.
Yeah, you're an absolute star. Thank you on behalf of everybody that's watched this today. I know they would have taken some value, and obviously I'll speak to you soon anyway. Guys, everybody else, I hope you've enjoyed it on Facebook.
Take care.
We will speak to you soon, and take care. Bye-bye.